Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is a decade of Loadsmart. A look back to move forward with my friend Felipe Capella. How's it going, Felipe?
Thank you very much, Joe, for being here. I'm doing great.
I'm excited to talk to you today. So please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
I'm calling from the great city of Chicago, where we have our headquarters. So my name is Felipe. I'm the CEO of Loadsmart and co-founder as well. So we're getting to our 10th year journey here and super happy to be talking to you once again. I think last time we talked was around 2021.
Yes. We were talking about before we hit the record button. A lot has changed. That was during COVID. But we'll touch on that a little more because you said some things in that interview that you are now doing. Some very interesting looks. Who does Loadsmart serve?
So we focus on shippers, right? Shippers are our main customers here. So we have a set of different solutions that include services and software for shippers. Our focus are shippers that have a freight span of from $5 million to $1 billion, right? Depending on very large enterprise shippers. Yeah, it's a wide range, right? Again, different services and software for different profiles. We have, for example, our Shipper Guide TMS. There's more focus on mid-market and small enterprise. So anything between $5 and $150-ish million of freight spent a year. Of course, in our brokerage arm, we deal with most of the Fortune 100 accounts, so very large enterprise shippers. So again, it depends on the actual solution, but it's a wide range of shippers. We do also have a lot of 3PLs and 4PLs as customers, especially on our facility software solutions like dock scheduling with OpenDock, our NavTrack, which is a computer vision software for asset tracking in and out of the facility. So again, different solutions, services, offerings, depending on the shipper profile.
Yep. And we're going to hit on this more than once, but you guys have a solution suite that is different than most other freight brokerages. And I think that comes a little bit from the heritage, which we'll touch on as we talk. Talk a little bit about that solution suite, what that includes.
And so if you take a look at the load journey, how a load really starts or is created until the load is, the financial terms are settled and carriers or brokers get paid. So if you start with the order, the ERP probably produces an order, sends that to our TMS. So we have a planning, optimization, and execution software solution that consumes that order, runs some optimization like consolidation maybe, or pick the right mode to move specific load, maybe consolidate LTLs into one LTL provider, or maybe consolidating LTL orders into a full truckload order. Then we have our marketplace component in which we have other brokers and other carriers, and shippers invite their own network of carriers and brokers to transact within the platform, right? Then we have, again, tendering with tender scenarios. So we have the whole planning and optimization procurement modules. Then as the load progresses, right, we select the carrier, the shipper selects a carrier, it hits the tendering process, then the load hits the facility eventually for pickup, for example. And at the facility level, we have a lot of software solutions. We have a dock scheduling solution called OpenDock. It's probably today the largest dock scheduling solution in the US. We're in more than 3,500 facilities. We process more than 10 million appointments per year. More than 50,000 registered carriers and brokers use the platform on a daily basis. Right? We have 18 gate out computer vision solutions. So if you have to track your assets, which is not for everyone, depending on your volume or the type of monitoring that you want in and out of your facilities, we have a computer vision solution that identifies with using cameras, the plate numbers, container numbers. So again, it's an automatic computer vision solution. Then again, it goes back to when the load is finished, we have all the documentation management technology as well, and finish with audit and payments that is also embedded in our system. And part of that, like technology platform, we offer, of course, services as well. So we have a managed transportation service. So if you don't want to operate the system yourself, we do it on your behalf, right? So we're responsible for procurement. We're responsible to hold brokers and carriers accountable. We are responsible for the KPIs. And of course, we have our brokerage arm that provides services on a spot and contracted basis for whatever customers, right? If you're talking about, again, very large enterprise customers, we are very focused on our brokerage solutions for really large retailers, for example. But again, if you're a mid-size or small enterprise shipper, we have a lot of shippers that actually use pretty much all of our tax solutions and plus a few of all the services. So if you're a shipper and you call us, what we're going to do is really have a nice discovery call to understand your own pain points and to see what types of solutions we have today in terms of technology and service that can help you deal with your pain points, right? Maybe it's a very niche solution. Maybe only stock scheduling. Maybe it is a procurement, only the RFP procurement tool. Oh no, I just want a tool to internalize my RFP process. Here it is. Okay. No, I want you to manage my RFP. You can use your own technology. So we have that kind of managed services as well. So again, we're very tailored to the customer needs. That's why we call ourselves today a logistics solutions company, right? Because we first hear from the customer, conduct discovery questions, and come up with what we believe is the best set of technology and service that fit that customer's need.
Yeah, it's an evolution. You talked before we hit record, you said it's really an evolution that you guys have gone through, but it's also what we've seen with the whole industry. Because where a lot of people, I'm going to generalize here, but a lot of shippers would just say, hey, I just need a broker to go get me a truck. That's it. And as they grew,
and that's fine.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
But if you go to a regular broker who doesn't have some of these other tools, you have to you grow beyond them. And what's nice about what you guys are serving is you can work with relatively small relatively small shippers, and as they grow and need more solutions, you have those solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we started back in 2014 as truly a freight brokerage, right? And the industry labeled us as like digital freight brokers. This is not something that we created. And back in the days, again, 14, 15, Transfix, Convoy, Uber Freight came a few years later as well. And they kept their focus on pure brokerage. And we saw it differently. We thought that there's so many pain points in the industry. And we raised some money, right? We raised more than $300 million of cash. So how do we best allocate that cash towards real pain points of shippers? So we started to invest a lot of, again, on software, customer-facing software, which is different from internal operating software, right? If you take a look at Convoy, for example, they spend pretty much all of their R&D resources, aside from the module that they called Convoy for Brokers, but 90% of their R&D was focused on internal operating workflows for their brokerage arm. And we also invested a lot on that up to 2020, 2021 when we talked back a few years ago. Then we realized we need to expand our value proposition. We need to widen it. We need to have a broader value prop that is more powerful beyond brokerage. Nothing wrong with brokerage. Again, we have a very strong brokerage arm that we're very proud of, and which has been growing a lot and providing services to both SMB companies, but also very large enterprise companies. But we have other solutions right beyond that, as you mentioned yourself.
Yep. We'll talk more about the evolution of not only Loadsmart, but of the industry. But let's talk a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Loadsmart. And then I want to know also, as part of that story, why did you start Loadsmart?
Yeah, so in my previous life, I was a lawyer, believe it or not. So as you can tell by my weird accent, I was born in Brazil. So lived there until mid to late 20s. I actually practiced law for a few years in Brazil. And moved to Madrid for academic purposes, came to the US also for academic purposes. Yeah, and then ended up in a New York white shoe law firm doing mostly M&A. So worked there for a few years, went to Washington, D.C., worked for the Inter-American Development Bank doing finance, sovereign guaranteed operations for Latin American countries and states and cities. And then after, 11, 12 years of this corporate life, I said, I want to start something from scratch. I want to start something that I create, and that's coincidentally a friend of mine called Ricardo Salgado was going through the same journey, but his background was at Goldman Sachs. So he worked 13 years at Goldman Sachs. And actually, he had the idea of attacking the freight industry. So I give him a lot of credit for that. Very pragmatic guy, looked at healthcare, finance, and transportation. And he thought, hey, transportation, there's a lot of room for growth. Take a look at the fragmentation of the industry. We really fragmented shippers, brokers, and carriers. Size of the industry, gigantic TAM, right? $800+ billion industry, and lacks technology, as falling a bit behind compared at least to other industries. So that we thought that was a good place to start. Made a lot of mistakes, especially coming out of the industry, and learned a lot. But I think we have been able to adapt quite quickly. And here we are today after 10 years.
So you said total, or TAM, total addressable market. So to your point, it's a huge space, and you saw that it lacked technology. And again, you guys weren't from the typical freight brokerage background, and you were in New York. Did you guys start in New York and then move to Chicago?
We did. We started like in 2014 in a small New York office because I was living there. Ricardo was living there. As we were there, we started a company there. After a few years, we realized that New York is probably not the best place to to establish a freight broker, right? So we started our Chicago office, and in the following years, the Chicago office grew tremendously. So at a certain point, actually, when COVID hit, our Chicago office was 10x bigger than our New York office. So I made a decision to move to Chicago and officially transfer the headquarters to the Chicago office, which again was already much bigger than the New York office anyways. But again, that's part of those learning lessons, right? Again, in hindsight, it may look a bit obvious, like, hey, you guys started a brokerage in New York, not very smart, maybe. But again, we corrected that as we grew. And again, I think we have been able to make strategic decisions that allow us to be really in a leadership position today in terms of value proposition in transportation and logistics for shippers.
Yep. And by the way, people don't think of New York as a tech center, but it clearly is one of the tech centers of this country. And nothing wrong with Chicago, but there's also nothing wrong with New York. There's lots of companies that have grown out of that. And it's funny because we tend to think of tech and go, oh, all the tech's got to be out in Silicon Valley. That's not the story anymore. So
New York is a huge tech hub. I think the challenge with brokerage is that brokerage is still a highly, first of all, is a service, right? All the technology that you invest is mostly to support the service. And second, is still like headcount heavy, right? Exactly because it is a service. So that's, I think, what the challenge is. So do you think it's a good idea to have, I don't know, hundreds of people operating a brokerage out of Midtown Manhattan with the costs associated with New York, and also the lack of talent, to be very honest, in freight? You don't find a lot of people with experience in logistics and freight in New York City. And you do find that a lot in Chicago. And again, as Ricardo and I came out of industry, we needed to hire a lot of people that knew much more than we did. So that was another reason why we started the Chicago office as well, to hire the right talent and balance much more our technology bias, if you will, with the actual logistics expertise.
Yep. We're going to talk a little bit again about the evolution, looking back and then move forward. And one place maybe we can start, just because I remember it, I interviewed you in April 2021, right in the middle of COVID. And actually that day, my mother wasn't feeling well. So I did the interview from my mother's house and hopefully it wasn't too loud over there. But you said something, I looked back at it just before we hit record. It was called Beyond Cost Per Load with Felipe Capella. I'll put a link in the show notes. But what was interesting is you were already saying, hey, yes, technology like the technology we're using, it lowers our cost per load. It gives us an advantage because we're using technology. And and some of that money can be given back to customers. Others can be reinvested into more tech and more people and more services. But you were already saying it's not just about cost per load, because there's other value that can be added for the shipper. And we didn't think in those ways before. It was tended to be the advantage of technology is it just reduces cost. which is great. We all want to help be able to reduce costs, but it wasn't just about that. Please elaborate.
Yeah, so I think at that point in time in 2021, people were talking a lot about technology and brokerage as a tool to reduce cost per load, right? And back then, again, in 2021, as we started the company in 2014, it was already our sixth or seventh year of investing a lot in technology for our brokerage operations. And we had already realized there were diminishing returns, right? Trying to automate every single small internal task sometimes was just not worth it. And also the most expensive internal or brokerage tasks were actually not the purely internal workflows. The most expensive tasks, meaning that the ones that require a lot of human touch, are the ones between the broker and a carrier, or the broker and the shipper, right? As carriers are still not very well known for the use of technology, it's very difficult to automate any workflows in which you have a counterparty that does not use APIs, for example, right? Again, we saw a lot of diminishing returns. And around that time, 2020, 2021, we started to reallocate pretty much, or a large chunk of our R&D to customer-facing technology. We said, okay, let's now try to add value through technology to customers themselves instead of trying to keep automating our internal processes. And I think that was a very, in hindsight, and we made a lot of mistakes, but this was in hindsight a good decision, because again, today we just add much more value to shippers than just transacting one load here and there. Again, nothing wrong with shippers that just want to move one load. We help them with that as well. We're pretty competitive, but we go beyond that for shippers that are interested in hearing about digitizing their own workflows, being a bit more effective on procurement, trying to reduce freight spend through network optimizations or benchmarking the rates. We can be much more effective there today than we were, again, around 2020 or 2021.
Yeah. And I think I talked to a lot of shippers, and I think shippers are changing also. It used to be, and when I worked at a little 3PL, people tended to say, I'm going to send you an Excel spreadsheet and you tell me how much money you can save me. And it was very transactional. I'll give you tomorrow's loads in an Excel spreadsheet. You put your price there, and if you're the lowest, you win the business. And I would always, even at that little company I was at, I said, we don't want to work with you like that. I don't want to be a transactional part. And I won't mention the name, but I spent some time visiting one of the largest freight brokers out there. And they said, we had to change over the last decade because shippers tended to be very transactional in the 10, 15 years ago. The best shippers now, the larger ones will say, are now very much looking for partners who can keep up and who can bring value with technology. It is a sea change in the business. And as those bigger guys want it, I'm sure the smaller guys say, yes, if you're a 20 something, a 30 something, your expectation is there's a tech solution for my problem.
Yeah. And I think that it's even more true if we talk about mid-sized to small enterprise shippers, right? There is a room and for transactional services, right? Take a look at, I don't know, these very large enterprise accounts. They move loads on spot for specific reasons, right? Due to specific either strategies or normal workflow purposes, but they have a lot of planning behind them, right? They're actually pretty sophisticated in how they move freight. Actually, this is something that I think is important to mention as well. When you look from out of the industry, again, that's me before 2014, because of the lack of technology, you tend to think that there's a lot of room for improvement, and there is, especially through technology again. But we need to give credit to brokers and 3PLs and enterprise shippers out there. The level of operational efficiency of these companies is very impressive, right? When I take a look and I talk to my colleagues of other brokerages, very successful brokerages, again, the level of discipline and operational efficiencies that they are able to implement and execute with limited technology is super impressive. So again, although the industry does lack a bit of technology because of, again, a lot of different reasons, right? There are not crazy, there are good reasons for that, especially that supply chain is an area that you cannot make mistakes, right? So where people are naturally risk averse, right? Again, for good reasons. Yeah, people are a bit more, they think twice before adapting a new piece of technology, again, for good reasons. But the level of operational efficiency that US brokers and 3PLs have is actually pretty impressive with the limited technology that they have. I have to say that.
Yep. And it's interesting. This was logistics and supply chain are one of the last groups to become digitized. And I came from automotive in 2010 to this business, and I was shocked by how far behind it was compared to automotive, which is a very mature space. But quickly realized it was for very good reason. It's easy if you say I have a factory to automate within those four walls and use technology within those four walls. But as soon as you have a supply chain that stretches to Latin America and to Asia, and then has 10 different parties touching it, you go, oh, okay, I get it. If we're not all on the same tech, I get that there's time zone differences and language differences and currency differences. And then it gets here. It's even complicated here where you say, yeah, I have 16,000 trucking companies that I'm working with, and some are very small and some are very big.
You mentioned the shippers wanting a partner, and I think you're very right. And again, my point was that mid-sized shippers, that's even more true, because we see a lot of mid-sized shippers. A couple of companies come to my mind that were having $100-200 million of revenues a year, right? And in 2-3 years grew to 600, 700, $1 billion plus. So these companies are growing very fast, right? And keeping up the supply chain and logistics for this type of very fast growing companies is very challenging. So for these companies, these are our perfect customers, because again, we have all this set of technologies and services that we can plug in as they grow, and we can truly partner up for the long term. Sometimes we can build things for them specifically, again, because we're partners. Hey, I'm going to build this for the shipper because I know that I can leverage that same piece of technology for the next 10 shippers. But we do a lot of initiatives developing specific things for the specific shippers. So mid-size, high-growth companies are companies that truly benefit from a partner like ourselves.
Yep. So I want to talk a little more about that evolution. So in 2021, when I talked to you last, you were talking about business intelligence, what we can do with business intelligence. We can help you make better decisions with business intelligence. And it was novel because you were saying things like, hey, if you tell us on Tuesday rather than Wednesday, we can save you 10, 15% more on your shipment. If you can just give us a little more notice, we'll get you a truck. And I was like, it was novel. It was way to add value without saying I found a cheaper truck, right? I'm going to look at the shipping function and find better ways to work. But now you guys are using business intelligence to power your AI. And you sent me an email with a demo yesterday, and I was blown away. And I was like, now business intelligence, which sounded like the future of this business, now looks like yesterday's news. We still need it, but it's not as impressive when you compare it to AI. Please elaborate.
Yeah, so we're launching I don't know when this is going to air, but on September 10th, we're launching Freight Intel AI, which I sent you the demo video. Yeah, which is a tool that ingests all your raw transportation data, right, and creates intelligence out of that. Because I think you have two main types of shipper issues out there when it relates to data. Either you do not have access to your own data. You think your data is scattered across different systems, right? Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I have to go to my ERP, my TMS. I have another solution which is integrated with my TMS, is all over the place. The data doesn't sync or doesn't talk to each other, so I don't know what to trust. So you have really a raw data problem. That's one of the issues that shippers have. On the other side, you have shippers that have a lot of data, have access to data, sometimes not that clean data, but the data is there, and don't know what to do with that amount of data, right? Yeah, sure, I have reports with thousands of data lines, or if I'm lucky enough, I have, I don't know, a Power BI dashboard that I can look at. I just don't know what to do with that. I have to assign analysts, sometimes software engineers, to clean the data, then senior data analysts or senior planners to go through the reports and trying to find what should I do with that data? What are the opportunities that I have? Again, our tool just ingests that data and creates actual intelligence that is very actionable, right? So it says, hey, you have an issue in your outbound North California shipments, usually ship an LTL from the same location to the same location in whatever, Dallas. And there's an opportunity for you to consolidate that within the same shipments, or at least same carriers. Or there's an opportunity to consolidate the LTL into FTL. Or you have in the past 60 days, we have seen a decay in your service level in inbound North Florida, especially coming out of these 3 carriers over here. You should talk to these carriers. You have, I'm just giving examples of the intelligence that the tool creates automatically. You have enough volume in these 5 lanes over here to actually move from spot to contract, and we believe it's the right time to lock contracted rates, so you should run an RFP for the specific lanes, right? So this is a type of really spoon-fed intelligence is as if you had a 24/7 senior transportation analyst at your disposal at a blink of an eye. And not only that, after the system comes with all this intelligence, all the insights that we call, or some people here internally call it stories, you can drill into the data by just talking to the system in plain English with it, leveraging the large language models. Yeah.
That kind of blew me away. And but by the way, I want to frame this for just a moment. When I was still helping people manage freight, I would always say, I don't want to see, don't give me an Excel spreadsheet. I want to put it in PowerPoint and give me key performance indicators. I want to see on-time performance. I want to see a cost measure. I want to see damage measure. I want billing accuracy. You might throw something in for sustainability. And the reason I was saying that is because I can't manage 30 columns of data. That's useless. So I would think the smart way, if you were to ask me 5-7 years ago, what's the smart way? Go use key performance indicators. But AI doesn't need that. It says, no, give me all your information. I'll take all of it and I'll put it in format. I'll analyze things you don't even know how to analyze. And what I saw yesterday when I looked at that video, I watched it twice, it had just uploaded your information, looked like out of it's probably downloaded out of a system into a CSV file, I'm assuming, upload into these, what do you call it? You call it Freight Intel AI? And then all of a sudden it had 10 recommendations and it was saving money, improving service. And then it was, and I thought this was interesting, it said, the user said, hey, carrier ABC is a premium carrier, meaning they cost more. So all of a sudden the system said, okay, so we're no longer asking you to requote this one. And that's the kind of thing that it's the context of the situation that a freight analyst who had knowledge of that account could do. And all that you're doing is in a chat feature saying, hey, how about this?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, Joe, that you raised about context, right? And something that still a challenge, in all honesty, right? Because when we get all the raw data, we can come back with 10, 15, 20 insights or stories about optimization opportunities, right? And to your point, we name another, I think, benefit of the tool is to really rank which ones have the highest opportunity, right? You can save $200,000 in this opportunity, you can save 75. Where really to focus, I think a lot of times people don't have the whole landscape of opportunities to select the right one, right? Whenever people bump into an opportunity, they just want to fix that one. But sometimes they do know that there are 2 or 3 that are actually larger than that. So I think there's another benefit of the tool. But the beauty of the tool as well, as you mentioned, like you can give context, right, to the tool. And we're still improving that and creating more ways of doing that. But I think the idea actually to evolve the tool in the next few quarters is to allow shippers to give, again, context in English to the platform, saying these kind of things, right? Actually, outbound North California, I have an issue with the plant, so delays are expected. I don't know, we need to rely a bit more on the spot market, whatever that is, that you can just type down in plain English, and the system takes that into consideration, sometimes removes insights, sometimes tweaks insights to your context. But context is very important, right? And it's also not only that you see the 20 insights, 10 insights, whatever that is, wow, everything makes a lot of sense, I'm just going to execute. Again, sometimes you look at an insight, yeah, it is an insight, but I have internal reasons why I'm overpaying a carrier, why my service is so bad, or why I have seen a decaying service in a certain region, or why I'm not taking consolidation into consideration, or why I'm not taking other modes. I know that this matches a ramp to ramp opportunity. Maybe I could move that on rail, but there are reasons why I'm not moving that on rail. So it's not, the tool is not perfect, right? Again, it depends on context, but our job here is to allow the user to give more and more context to the tool until it gets to a point that you have a quasi individual model that works really well for you or your company specifically, right? Because it understands so well how you operate.
What you touched on a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about what I always just call dirty data. And it's, we have data that we take out of systems. And for years, I've heard people say when I'm advising shippers on selecting 3PLs, they'll go, I said, I would like a weekly meeting where we go over how we did last week. And they'll say, oh, we can do that automatically out of our TMS. And I always say, no, you can't. And I always say the reason you can't is because the weakness of humans using your system. And so we sometimes have dirty data, and sometimes that's the lack of context. I remember seeing, what are all these shipments for $100? There are no shipments that were $100. I know it. And yet they were in there. And somebody knew a story behind it, but we didn't. And so you guys, as the owner of the TMS and all the other systems that connect, you already can normalize and clean up that data before it gets to AI, before you put it in FreightTel in AI, FreightTel in AI. And I think that's some real problem is when someone's listening right now saying, yeah, I know AI will work, but what if our data isn't perfect?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think people face issues with raw data, right, or dirty data, as you mentioned, because of a few reasons. Very large shippers, to your point, that rely on these more legacy enterprise TMSs. These TMSs are, first of all, very customized, right? So you have a lot of customized fields, and usually users ask for more flexibility. Whenever you have more and more flexibility, you start having a lot of custom things and free entry fields, right, in which you can put either numbers or letters or symbols, and that starts to generate a very convoluted data set, right? So that's one problem. Second problem is that, again, a lot of large shippers have different systems that talk to each other through very old school, if you will, architecture, right? So you have data flowing in and out of the TMS or importing data from other places that already come with a lack of cleanness, if you will. And on the other spectrum, you have shippers that sometimes operate out of spreadsheets, in which, again, formatting, it's very different, or sometimes it's very loose, right? There's no enforcement of any specific formatting. So you do have all these things. And yeah, for us, the best case scenario is that, hey, I'm going to use your cloud-based TMS. And actually, we're launching with the Freight Intel AI already embedded in our TMS. So you don't have to do anything. The Freight Intel AI is already there. So that's the benefit for shippers that use our TMS. But this is a standalone product, right? So we are integrating with other TMSs out there, and we do consume raw data as well, right? So that's not an issue. And we have a team here. If your data is really dirty, we have a team that kicks in and cleans up the data first. Yeah, it may take then maybe a bit more than just a few seconds to run the model, right? We clean the data internally, but we do all the service for you, right? I don't think people truly need insights in 30 seconds, right? I think as long as you generate insights that are meaningful. Again, it usually takes people a month to 3 months to be able to execute on those insights anyways, because again, supply chain and transportation are very complex to change and optimize. So our goal is to actually deal with all the problems that you mentioned. We do not want this tool only to work with beautiful data, but we want this tool to work with dirty data, with data that comes directly with your from your TMS. We are talking to most of the TMSs out there to build PIs in which we're going to have a very sophisticated way of cleaning up the data and this data transmission, right? Setting up parameters, ignoring certain things, and also the AI tool in general. And that's not only true for our AI tool. That's true for most of AI tools. AI tools are very good of ignoring the noise, right? Again, it's one of the benefits of AI tools that you have so much data out there. You don't really know what is important from what is not important. So AI tools can do a good job saying, you know what, this data set here is unimportant. Hey, this data set here looks odd. It looks your $100 shipments. I'm going to ignore that for now. Or there are conflicting data sets here and there. I'm going to maybe not take that into consideration. So it cleans up the data almost automatically, just identifying noise. I say, this is noise. Let me focus on what really matters.
Yeah. So you guys can normalize, clean it up. And that is going to be a while. This is not an overnight thing, but I think normally when you have a problem in business, you move upstream. When you move upstream from your freight AI, you move to TMS. You guys are a TMS company also. So it's a lot easier, and you'll be able to say anybody using our system, it's probably, I don't want to oversell here, but it's probably automatic because it's already clean.
It is automatic. I think it's probably taking today, I don't know, maybe my product and engineering teams are going to kill me here, but I think it takes from 30 seconds to 1 minute. Again, because we have to run the large language models in the background. That takes some time. But again, I think 30 seconds, 1 minute, you can wait. We don't have a problem with that delay usually.
It was crazy to watch. And again, I just watched the 5-minute demo that you sent me. And it was like a conversation back and forth with a chat, using the chat feature. It's almost like you're messaging a friend and you say, hey, what about this? And it's just one recommendation pops up and it says, and it's asking, and it's creating more and more valuable information as it incorporates your insights.
Yeah, one of the coolest things that I think the tool does is that once you have one of these insights or one of the stories or optimization opportunities, you can chat or ask questions about that specific insight, right? Saying, hey, wait, can you give me the raw data about that insight? Oh, here it is. Okay. Can you transform this data into X, Y, and Z columns? Or can you change the data frame? Can you put that in a map? Can you build a graph? And then the system keeps responding to you, right? It's pretty cool. Some people are concerned about the effect of this type of tool with their jobs, right? And in the employment landscape. I think that actually empowers people to be more efficient, right? And empowers people to run analysis much faster and truly allow people to dedicate their time solving problems, which again, the tool cannot go out there and solve your issues, right? What the tool can do is to really highlight the opportunities that you have, but you still need people to fix it, right? To create initiatives. It's to do change management and whatever else needs to be done. So this is truly a tool that empowers people to be more efficient and to be agents of change in their organization more than, hey, you're gonna lose your job because this AI tool is coming for you.
No, I didn't make this up. Somebody else did, but you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by another person using AI. So you better start using it. But what occurred to me while I was looking at some of the recommendations is when they're saying, hey, we consolidate these 5 LTLs into a truckload, we can do this. And it was just spitting these out. And a lot of them were reducing our carbon footprint. And I know that's super important for a lot of companies. And it's not as important probably as money is, but they're being pushed. And we're going to, as the supply chain, we're going to have to limit carbon footprint or the government's going to step in and do it for us. So I know there's a lot of big shippers who are asking for that. And boy, that's the tool. It's not just saving money. It's not just optimizing. It's making it better. And I even was saying things like, how about a new location here? I was like blown away. Say, if you go to location here, it would save you this money. I was like, you don't have anyone. You said something earlier about this would give you the, on demand supply chain analyst. Most analysts would never come to that. That was an insight that they wouldn't have. They might have to implement it, but they would not come to that.
Maybe that's why I say it's a senior analyst.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. The tool allows, again, there's a direct benefit, again, to empower people to be agents of change and implement cost saving matters. But to your point, it just drives more efficiency in the whole supply chain or company logistics. And that has a lot of downstream benefits, right? We reduce freight spend. If we reduce freight spend for the company, we make the company more efficient. If we're talking about like food and beverage, for example, you're actually reducing the cost at the retailer level eventually, right? So you're benefiting the whole population. You do have environmental benefits, right? You're becoming more efficient. You're consolidating loads. You're moving fewer empty loads, right? So it's again a tool that is quite powerful for a lot of different shippers. And again, we're integrating with other TMSs. If you have your data on spreadsheets, no problem at all. We would love to introduce you to our own TMS, but because it's already native there. But if you work again with any other mid-market or enterprise TMS, or you have your data raw in spreadsheets or CSV files, it works across the board.
I love it. I love it. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and we talked about it before we hit record, you mentioned APIs. And so we're all using APIs to connect. It makes it so much easier. It used to be these long and painful integrations where you pay somebody to come in and connect one system to another, and it was a one-off, and it was expensive in terms of time, but also in terms of money. But these APIs, when I can connect easily to the world, we now have a potential cybersecurity problem. And I know you guys are knee deep in cybersecurity. So talk about what you think is going on for the future of our industry when it comes to cybersecurity.
Yeah, on the API side, I would love everyone to operate via APIs, right? I'm slightly skeptical about the usage of the LLM models and Gen AI tools to try to solve the issues of logistics and transportation via replicating calls. I think this is a quasi robocall solution that will be probably the worst solution of them all. I think the industry will be much better off at just adopting APIs. If you truly want to automate a data flow, which is your core problem, the solution is API adoption. Is not truly trying to circumvent that with AI supported robocalls. But that's my view. When it comes to cybersecurity, yeah, it's a concern that we always have had. Again, we have a large software engineering team, and lots of shippers depend on our systems to operate, right? Again, we have only in the dock scheduling side, we have more than 3,500 warehouses that depend on our system on a daily or hourly basis, right? On our TMS side, we have really large amounts of freight volume going through that on a minute by minute basis. So we cannot fail because companies depend on us. So we have always taken cybersecurity and data security very seriously, which is a big concern that I still have today, right? Because when I talk to shippers, this is truly at the bottom of their concern list, right? They're concerned about cost, first and foremost, and hitting the budget, and second, service level, sometimes the other way around. But then again, you go through a big list, and cybersecurity or data security is really at the bottom of the list. I talked to some shippers, very large shippers, like Fortune 50 shippers, and I'm still trying to process why they are not concerned. I have been providing services to some of these very large enterprise shippers for almost 10 years. And I can tell you how many times I was audited to see if I was complying with their contractual IT requirements. And the total amount of times that I was audited so far in 10 years has been zero. And again, we are very sophisticated. We have a full-time cybersecurity team. We have a blue team that's our defense team for hacking attacks. We have our red team, which actually tries to infiltrate the system. So it's a cat and mouse internal thing, which is very interesting to see. A lot of education internally about phishing, about other cybersecurity or data threats. So we take this very seriously. We are SOC 2 approved, so we have SOC 2 certificate. But again, when you go out there and you talk to shippers that rely sometimes on 50 brokers, 200 carriers, and they change brokers on a daily basis and they change carriers on a daily basis, do they know if these brokers, carriers have any basic data security protocols in place? They don't. It is in their contract. There are a couple of pages there, probably in the contract, right? That says, hey, if you have systems or if you access our systems through a password, this password has to be protected by a password management software. It's in few of our contracts. I really doubt that 90% of the suppliers, in terms of transportation suppliers, carriers, and brokers out there, check all these boxes, which again for us are very basic boxes. And I think shippers should be much more concerned because it's not only a question of being hacked. There are a lot of other issues, right? There are data privacy issues. There are data leakage issues. If you allow a lot of people to have access to your systems on a daily basis, not only that, but you have a lot of information flow between the shipper and the broker and the carrier, right? And this information flow can drive fraud, can drive theft, and can drive actually much worse things from that point on. I do think shippers should start auditing brokers and carriers, conduct like an annual random audit and don't call it cybersecurity because that scares people. They think it's unreasonable. Call it audit and check if they comply with the very bare minimum IT security protocols that you guys already have in your contracts. So I'm trying to advocate for that, trying to make shippers hear me. I think eventually it's going to happen because either very bad things going to happen or people are going to realize that they're running risks that they should not run. We take that very seriously.
We've seen, and by the way, a lot of companies that have suffered a cybersecurity attack don't talk about it. But there's a number of large trucking companies that it's happened to. So if it can happen to large trucking companies, it can happen to small ones. And companies like yours are connecting the supply chain. So you're connecting to Fortune 500, Fortune 5,000 companies, small shippers, big shippers. But you're also with tens of thousands of small carriers. And so you guys have to be that wall, but you're also the conduit. That's the weird part about it. You're the one who's moving that information on the supply chain, and it just has to be done right.
But Joe, even as a brokerage provider, right, I do think it is very important. For example, if I was either a Fortune 500 shipper or maybe a mid-sized shipper that is in growth mode, and I'm relying on a set of sometimes 3 or 4 brokers, right, to move a big chunk of my freight. Imagine if 1 or 2 of those brokers shut down, which has happened to your point with very large carriers, shut down due to cybersecurity issues. It may not even affect me from a systems perspective, right, but it affects tremendously my supply chain, right? And the resilience of my supply chain and the ability that I have to serve my customers on a daily basis. That probably has a few days of nightmare.
It's a black eye on your reputation too.
Yeah, so why not hold your brokers and 3PLs accountable? Again, I'm not asking for all of the brokers and 3PLs out there to be like us. I do understand the differences. So I'm not asking these guys to have cybersecurity teams and red teams and blue teams, this kind of stuff. But they do have to at least comply with a very bare minimum, right? Use a password management tool, store your data or a customer's data in a certain way that avoids data leakage, or conduct at least annually this training, cybersecurity training to people that have access to shipper data, so they understand or try to avoid phishing, trying to avoid the very common ways that bad guys use to attack sensitive data. That's all I'm asking. Again, it starts with the shipper. When shippers start to take this seriously and start to audit their own providers, I think things are going to start to change.
And our friend Kevin Hill over at Brush Pass Research, he says there's 27,000 freight brokers, down from 30,000. And I do believe there's going to be some hurdles that we're going to be asked to get over in the freight brokerage business. And you guys have already, you probably are the best practice. There's a lot of companies who are just going to say, that's just not, we're not going to do that. We're mom and pa freight broker. And maybe that's fine for a lot of people, but I do believe there's going to be an event. I'm not wishing that to happen, but there's going to be an event where you're going to see shippers say, I need my freight brokers, I need my carriers, I need everybody to be SOC 2 compliant, if that's the right compliance. I'm not even sure. You would know better than I, but I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and again, I'm not even asking for these guys to be SOC 2 compliant or anything else.
I am. If I was a major shipper, I would say, why am I not working with SOC 2 compliant?
Me too. If I'm a Fortune 100 shipper, I would agree with you on that. But again, we should start with the basics, right? Again, a lot of enterprise, pretty much all actually enterprise contracts we sign have at least a couple of pages of IT. They call it IT requirements or something like that, which talks about their data storage, data processes, and user access, right? User access is something that is very important. Who will have access to my raw data? What type of data they will access? And depending on where they fall, you have some types of requirements. Again, training. Hey, everyone that has access to bulk data has to have this type of training here to avoid phishing and blah, 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 because I don't want my data to be floating around the internet. And I'm with you again. It starts with the shipper. And I think it's just a question of time, in all honesty. I think smart shippers are going to start doing that sooner than later. Again, if I'm right that shippers are, especially on the transportation side, risk averse, they should eliminate that risk, which is very easy for them to eliminate. Just set some requirements, enforce these requirements towards your current providers, at least the major brokers and carriers. And at least if something happens, you're going to be able to go to your boss and say, actually, I put this framework in place and I was enforcing the framework. If something happened, it was beyond what I could do. But it would be a shame if something happens and someone asks, okay, were you this broker or this carrier, did they have any type of, do they comply with our contract? And your answer is, I have no idea. We never checked, which is the current way of doing things.
Exactly. And by the way, I've helped large shippers select 3PLs in the past, and we did care about IT, but not to the level that as I think back, I think, what you've mentioned about the red team and the blue team fighting it out, trying to find gaps in your security. I would want to hear that from my logistics. I would want to hear from all my suppliers. That just makes sense. Hey, Felipe, there's only a few people in the freight business who know exactly what's going to happen in the market. And I know you're one of them. So please tell us what's going to happen in the freight market over the next 6 to 12 months.
I wish, Joe. Something that I will say is that, as you probably know, everyone was wrong, right? I think we were a little bit less wrong than everyone else. I think we have, if you take a look at all the predictions, I don't know, across or through the past year, right? We have always been the ones that were the most pessimistic in every single set of predictions. If you put together major brokers and other players out there, but even at the most pessimistic end, which was where we were still wrong, right? Because this cycle is taking that much longer. Right. And again, I do agree with the majority of the comments out there. We always said that it is a supply side issue. People thought like, well, if the economy picks up a bit, it's going to fix it. No, it's not. We have just too many trucks, too many brokers, just too many providers in general out there. And now, again, our projection is mid next year in which things are going to incrementally get better. We don't think we're going to see any dramatic swings. We think things are going to just slightly improve given the steady exit of carriers and brokers from the market. Companies will shut down in the next 6 to 9 months, and that's how the market corrects. There's no other answer to that.
We need some armies to leave the field. And you alluded to something, and I've heard it from Jason Miller from Michigan State. He said, oh, we're going to need some external event, maybe a rate cut, or he wanted to see housing starts go up in April. They did not, even though we need houses, but rates are still too high. But you believe that we grew too many carriers. And by the way, I'll throw this out there. This is anecdotal. I don't know this. I wouldn't be surprised if that COVID money made some people flush. You made a lot of money during COVID. A lot of people got checks from the government. But also, I think there's a lot of freight brokers who helped carriers, smaller ones, stick around longer because there was always another load.
Yeah, there are a variety. I don't think there's one single thing. All of the things that you mentioned are true, right? There are people that claim that the COVID helicopter money has helped companies to stay afloat for longer. That's probably true to a certain degree. Was that the main cause? I don't believe so. Again, I think just from a basic question of supply and demand, you have much more supply today. And I think actually to your point, brokers are part of the supply. I think the number of brokers also affect the depression of the market, if you will. It's not only a matter of how many trucks are on the road, but how many providers are trying to provide a specific service at a specific point in time. So yeah, again, it is what it is. And that's why I think in hindsight, it has been a good choice of ours to expand our value proposition, to be able to really tackle a variety of pain points and not truly depend only on transactional brokerage business. Although we're very excited about the next 2-3 years of our brokerage division. We are hiring some new leadership. We're very excited. But again, in general, if you ask me for this forecast, right now we're projecting mid next year to be incrementally better. I think people should, the brokers that I think have been the wrongest out there in the past year were actually the public ones. And I've become extremely skeptic of public brokers nowadays when they do projections, because I think they're very biased. Because again, because they have
they're talking to Wall Street.
yeah, they have to start trading on a daily basis, right? And sometimes they have their bonus attached to certain targets, and they have weird incentives in place. So I think, again, our assessment, I believe, has been one of the best ones on the pessimistic side, because we don't truly care, right, whether to make anyone happy for a short period of time.
Right. So, Felipe, I'm going to summarize, then I will get your final thoughts. And again, I'm talking to my friend Felipe Capella, and we're doing a look back to move forward. So I'm going to summarize. So in the beginning, we talked a little bit about this solution suite that you guys have now, which covers, I'm going to read right from it: assessment and analysis, planning and execution, gate and yard dock management, and then audit and analysis. And then this is a combination of technology, services, people, all working together. And then we talked about these AI solutions that you guys have, which is this Freight Intel AI, which I got a demo of yesterday. I'm not just saying this to be nice. I was really blown away. It's very cool. I wrote back to you last night. I love it was like a conversation going on back and forth. As you give it your context, it adjusts its analysis. And the insights were wonderful. I love that. Next, we talked about also throughout this evolution that you guys have gone through, but also other shippers. They have changed the way they look at the world. In the past, there was a transactional mindset where the brokers in the middle were just to get me a cheaper truck. Now we are way beyond that. And we talked about beyond cost per load. It is now brokers adding value in the middle, and that's reflected in the market. Brokered freight has gone up as an overall percentage, and that is something I didn't believe I would see. I thought as technology got in the middle, shippers would say, I don't need a broker. I can go directly to carriers through all of these other technologies. But companies like yours have added value in the middle. And remember when I was still selling logistics services, people go, oh, you're just a middleman. I was like, I'm a middleman who brings you technology, people, and cost savings. So explain to me how I'm a middleman. It's like calling my grocery store middleman because I can go buy my own oranges in Latin America. So
Yeah, so people sometimes forget that there's a reason why the middleman exists, and it's an economic reason or service reason. But you're right. 10 years ago, a lot of people would believe that a lot in disintermediation, and actually the contrary has happened. The penetration of brokerage has increased.
yep, and for good reason. Again, if you don't get to be in the middle if you don't add value. Last, we talked a lot about cybersecurity. If you're not looking into cybersecurity right now and you're a big shipper, you are making a mistake. And then we talked about the general state of freight, which again, I heard on my podcast end of 2023, that I heard beginning of 2024, that I heard the end of 2024, then I heard first quarter. Now I'm hearing second quarter, and it's going to recover when we have some armies leave the field. We need fewer carriers, and hopefully that's not painful for any individuals, but that's what needs to happen. It wouldn't hurt if we got a rate cut and maybe the economy ticked up also. And then I think that's it. Put a big old bow on this one, Felipe. Final thoughts. And by the way, thank you for going way over my time with you.
No, I appreciate it, Joe. This was overdue. Right, last time we talked was 2021. So glad to be here once again. I'm glad that the things that I mentioned in 2021 still make a bit of sense. So I'm not contradicting myself, which sometimes or very often I do. No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. Really, we're excited again about our positioning today, about being a logistics solutions company with a lot of different services and technology, and truly to partner up with high growth companies, with these shippers that do want to digitize their processes and reduce freight spend. And super excited about Freight Intel AI. If you want to check it, or probably just, I don't know, Google Freight Intel AI, or just go to, I'm going to guess here, freightintel.ai.
I'm going to put a link to all of this in the show notes so they can link to that.
Hopefully my marketing team doesn't kill me. But yeah, super excited. And again, thank you a lot for having me once again.
Yep. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, and any links that Rachel gives me, I'll put in the show notes. What conferences will we see on the Loadsmart people at?
Ooh, lots of different conferences. I have a list here.
You're at all the conferences. I see Loadsmart everywhere I go.
Yeah, I'm trying to access it. I don't know, it's not working. Here it is. September, we are at Portfest by Maersk Growth in Copenhagen. I'm going to be there September 10. And the Tech BBQ, which is a big European event in Denmark. The Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association, September 16. International Food Distributors Association Solutions Conference. We're going to be there September 23rd. SECO Vendor Expo, September 23rd in Chicago. 2024 GCCA Convention in Bonita Springs, Florida. Innovation Summit. I'm going to be there in Austin, Texas, September 23rd. CSCMP, September 29 in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's a busy month for
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Felipe, thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoy our conversation, and congrats on your success. Loadsmart keeps growing like a weed.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.